All right, we start in California, where Governor Gavin Newsom is suing the Trump administration after the National Guard was deployed to Los Angeles without the state's permission. It's the first time in 60 years that a president has deployed the National Guard without a governor's request. LA Police Chief Jim McDonnell says his officers arrested at least 39 people over the weekend when anti-ICE demonstrators clashed with police in pockets of the city near federal facilities. The protests erupted as a result of ICE raids across the county on Friday and continued into the weekend. The situation intensified when President Trump authorized the deployment of 2,000 National Guard troops to protect those federal buildings and officers. The demonstrations turned violent when some protesters throwing rocks and signs at officers, with video showing cars burning in the middle of the street. Sources tell CBS News several officers were injured during the clashes. Law enforcement also appeared to use tear gas and non-lethal methods in an effort to disperse the crowds. While returning to the White House, President Trump answered questions about the back and forth between him and Governor Newsom and the border czar, Tom Homan.
Gavin Newsom he's daring Tom Homan to come and arrest him. Should he do it?
I would do it if I were Tom. I think it's great. Gavin likes the publicity, but I think it would be a great thing.
New CBS News polling shows 55% of Americans like Trump's goals for his administration's program to deport migrants who are in the United States illegally. However, 56% of those polled dislike the administration's approach to achieve that goal. When asked what should happen if the administration wants to deport a non-U.S. citizen, 63% feel they should get a court hearing before they are deported, while just 37% say they should be deported prior to a court hearing. We begin with CBS News correspondent Elise Preston, who is on the ground in Los Angeles. Elise, thank you for joining us. What's the situation there today, and are more demonstrations expected?
Well, Tom, we are right in the middle of downtown, right in front of this federal building and detention center, where a lot of the chaos erupted over the weekend. And you can see that officers have cordoned off the streets. They're not really letting a lot of cars go back behind here. We also see that National Guardsmen are on the ready, both right in front of the building and on the side. Something that we're seeing just within the last 15 minutes or so are that there are some ground crews here that are cleaning up the area. They're kicking up a lot of dust and debris, irritants that kind of kicked up over the weekend. Now, we are starting to see some peaceful demonstrators gather out here. It's about a handful. We cannot pan our camera to show them to you because all across the area where they are, there are messages against ICE that are expletive in nature. So we cannot show them for you. But what we can say is from the scene right now, it's peaceful. Right here in this pocket of downtown LA, it looks like they're trying to get business going to some degree. There's traffic still flowing, but also traffic not allowed down that way. But law enforcement for now, both state, city, federal, they are on guard in case something does happen.
It's important to note, Elise, that this specifically impacted pockets of Los Angeles. This wasn't the city as a whole, but for most of the county, it was business as usual. Which specific areas were impacted, and what are LA residents saying about what unfolded there this weekend?
Yeah, it was pretty much business as usual, especially Friday night, right? There are so many events in town. Mind you, it's one of the major cities in the world, so many people were just visiting LA, just in LA. And then there were a lot of events going on this weekend, so those went off without a hitch. I think Saturday, a lot of Angelinos woke up and saw the news that, this was happening. So we are in downtown LA, definitely a pocket that's hit. When you're driving around this federal building, you see the remnants of that chaos. You see graffiti tagged all over the walls, all over the sidewalks, all over the fences. As far as what Angelinos are saying, the people who are out protesting, they were devastated that these operations took place. They were outraged, not only in the immigration policies, but also with the National Guardsmen now coming in. That was a move that Governor Gavin Newsom and local mayors said would escalate tensions.
Situation for now. We know how quickly these situations can escalate. Elise Preston, we know you'll stay on top of it. Elise, thanks. And joining us now from Washington is CBS News Department of Justice reporter Jake Rosen. Jake, always good to have you on, my friend. Turning back to the state of California suing the Trump administration, what's the basis for this lawsuit from the state's standpoint?
Well, that's right. Attorney General in California, Rob Bonta, said that there's a couple prongs of this lawsuit that they hope to be able to prove in court. The first and probably most important of which is that the title in which President Trump used to invoke the sending of 2,000 National Guard to California and sending them into Los Angeles County. Bonta said in a press conference just moments ago that Gavin Newsom needed to sign off on that. Now, however, it does appear like most of President Trump's powers around that title are pretty absolute and unchallengeable, although obviously California has been no stranger to suing President Trump. This is the 24th lawsuit that they filed against the administration so far. And in addition to that, Tom, Bonta said that Gavin Newsom's ability to be commander-in-chief of California's National Guard was stepped upon and infringed by President Trump, skipping the usual procedures to bring the National Guard in. In this case, Bonta said there are procedures in place that were bypassed and that President Trump and Defense Secretary Hegseth went 0 to 60 in bypassing those and choosing to escalate the situation, in Bonta's words, versus what he says, which is that he and Gavin Newsom had the situation under control before these National Guard members were sent in.
So then what's likely to happen next regarding how this all plays out?
We're still waiting on a hard copy of this lawsuit to see what exactly California is seeking. It's obviously, these troops are set to be there for at least 60 days or until Mr. Hegseth decides against that and can potentially end this down early. Let's just say if the protests were to die down unusually quickly. It's certainly possible that California could seek an emergency hearing in front of a judge to hear some of these. However, just based on kind of the complications between the executive branch and the powers it has over states, very likely that there will be some real legal consequences to whatever decision a lower court judge would make, which means it would likely go through the appeals process very quickly. This really has implications for what the Trump administration can do going forward if a judge does side with them, that they can invoke this to help protect federal buildings and federal officers as they go about their day-to-day business on ICE arrests and deportations and removals. It would allow potentially the Trump administration to do so in other places where it sees states not complying. Obviously, that would be a stretch a little bit of the statute that says there needs to be some kind of invasion for President Trump to invoke this statute, but we've seen the Trump administration find some success in that so far, at least in terms of removing people from Venezuela under the Alien Enemies Act that also specifies the need for an invasion.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. This case could have some pretty major implications. Jake Rosen for us in Washington. Jake, thank you. I want to turn now to CBS News White House reporter Olivia Rinaldi. How is the White House defending its decision to summon the National Guard, and under what authority did the administration decide to mobilize these troops?
Well, Tom, it's good to be with you. We just heard from the president again in a True Social post saying that Los Angeles would have been, quote, obliterated had he not taken action. And then he went on to say that California Governor Gavin Newsom and Mayor Bass of Los Angeles should be thanking him for what he did in sending in those National Guard troops. And to the authority that he used something called Title 10, a federal statute that allows him to really circumnavigate a state's governor in putting in National Guard troops, even if they're not requested. Now, it's been decades since we've seen this statute be used, but the president said previously, even on the campaign trail quite often, Tom, if I'm being honest with you, that he would use his authority as president to put National Guard troops on the ground, even go as far as putting the military on the ground if needed to tamp down any sort of protest nationwide. So quite notable that the White House is using this statute as it has not been used for several decades.
All right. So other headlines coming out of the White House today, of course, we're also learning that President Trump is supposed to be speaking with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu today. What are we learning about that discussion? What's expected to come out of it?
Well, Tom, we're waiting for a readout from that phone call. We do not know if it took place this morning or if it's going to take place later this afternoon. But this is all coming as the president made his first trip to Camp David of his second administration, last night, where he met with military officials. So quite notable that that call is happening today. This also comes as there's ongoing negotiations between the Trump administration and the Iranians about their nuclear program. We know previously that the president cautioned Israeli Prime Minister Minister Benjamin Netanyahu against making any attack against Iran or their nuclear facilities, as they've been trying to hammer out a potential deal between the two nations. So we'll have to see what happens as a result of that phone call today.
Olivia Rinaldi keeping tabs on everything coming out of the White House. Olivia, thank you.